here this morning to do this important work. Um, I'll kind of go through a little bit of what we're going to try to cover today, and I'm super excited to tell you that we're spending most of our time today really diving into our recommendations for the standards. So that's exciting. And toward the end of today's meeting, we'll also set aside some time for each of you to have the opportunity to give up to 2-minute comment so that you can either comment on the process or the agenda, but also just on any other perspective that you'd like to share in a sort of open-ended way. We'll also have a chance to discuss the opportunity for our recommendations to get public comment before our December meeting. So we'll talk about that. And with that, I would like to introduce Kristen Rush from TSPC, who's going to kind of go over these options for us on how we approach the recommendations for the standards. So I'll let you take that away, Kristen.
Awesome, thank you. So basically, we just want to make sure that we're continuing to center our work in the Oregon Early Literacy Framework. The framework's going to serve as that scaffolding that we're going to use to layer all of our knowledge of higher education, all of our knowledge of teacher preparation, all of our knowledge of how children learn and grow. And so I just wanted to reorient you to this slide on the council's role in that. And again, just a reminder about what kind of is due in December. So the December deadline is coming up really fast. We know that. And our charge is to make recommendations for changes and updates and, kind of new educator preparation program approval standards. This work is different from, but is definitely going to inform our work for our March deliverables, which are recommendations for changes to licensing standards. And so we want to really put that on the back burner, but know that this work is going to inform the work for March. And so we're really going to dive into the work on educator preparation standards recommendations today. And so I'm going to share a document that I'm hopeful that you've seen. It came through the email last week with the materials for this meeting. And so I just want to orient you to this document. This is what we're going to be discussing in breakouts today. And so I also just want to be clear that any conversations that are happening in breakouts are just to inform the larger group, and that all decisions are going to be made in the whole group with the whole council, and decisions are not going to be made in the breakout rooms. But that's just kind of where we're able to have conversation where we can hear all voices. So option 1 and option 2 are both going to rely on making use of the Oregon Early Literacy Framework. It's going to make use of the conversations we've already had, as well as the review of the states. And both rely on your expertise. And so I want to make that clear as we go into both recommendations. The difference between the two is that simply what that first lens is. So for example, option 1 begins with that first lens being the Oregon Early Literacy Framework look-fors, and how they apply to what educator preparation programs are required to do. So again, like both of them are going to be including conversations that we've already had. Both are going to include expertise from the council, and both are going to include what we know from other states. But option 2, on the other hand, it starts with centering those other states. And so we would have to come to consensus on, 1 or 2 states. And then, we've really intentionally not identified states that we find exemplary, because we believe that would be a council decision. So the council would have to come to consensus on which states to focus on, and then use that as that initial lens with which to look at our work. So for both options, we're going to recommend starting with guiding principles, knowledge, skills, and dispositions of educators. So I'm going to scroll down to the example. This is the example of outline option number 1. And so just to kind of orient you to the work that we would recommend given this option. And so it starts with the lens of that Oregon Early Literacy Framework. Then we move into guiding principles, followed by knowledge, skills, and dispositions. And then page 3, it is similarly structured, but starts with that lens of other states. Oh, sorry. But starts with the lens of work that other states have already done. And so basically we're going to break out into breakout rooms and have a conversation about which option we would like to start with. Are there any questions about these two options? Awesome. So we are going to put you in breakouts by the potential work groups that you expressed interest in using that poll. And so they're organized by the sections of the Oregon Early Literacy Framework. And in your breakouts, we just want you to go around and have every member of the council share your perspective of which option you think is most relevant and why. There's going to be a staff person in the room specifically just so that all voices are heard, like super light facilitation. But council members should be driving that discussion. And so basically a brief rationale of your decision, and then we're going to do a full meeting poll back at the whole group and try to reach consensus on which option to go with. Any questions about what we're doing in breakouts?
No, but Kristen, can I add one more thing? I
Absolutely.
just want to make sure that I point out that option one doesn't preclude us from looking at what some of the other states have done. So just so it's not, it's not like black and white, one or the other. It really gives us that option to do that in option one as well.
Yes,
But later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We have all of our group back from breakout rooms. Good morning again, everyone. So now that we've had a chance to talk through the options and that work group structure in our breakouts, we wanted to go back to that FIST to 5 framework that we had used before. So what we're going to do is we are going to open up a poll for folks to vote. So I know it was just on the screen. I think they'll put it up again, just to remember what FIST to 5 entails. So what we're going to be voting on first is option 1. And then we will see where we all land after everybody gets a few minutes. Oh, everybody's coming back yet. Sorry. So we are going to be opening up a poll here shortly to see if we can get some consensus using that FIST to 5 framework that we had used in our first couple of meetings. And so just to remember or to refresh our memories about how that works, FIST to 5 lets you provide your level of feedback, trying to move us all to consensus. So thinking about a 3, 4, to 5, as I can resolve some of these issues later. 4, I'm fine with this as it is. 5, I love it, we'll champion it. And then 0, 1, and 2 would indicate more issues or concerns with that particular option. So we'll see where we are after that poll and see if we need further conversation. So with that, I think Alex was going to open up a poll. Questions before we go into that?
Yes, one moment here.
So as Alex is getting that going, just a reminder that council members only should be voting. Okay, so this is for option 1.
One moment with the poll. Sorry about this. It looks like there is some technical difficulty with it. So, oh,
I think it's launched, Alex.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm able to vote. Hopefully that window popped up for council members to vote. Good.
Okay, did all the council members have a chance to vote? Anybody who hasn't yet? Okay. I'm gonna end the poll and just screen share the results. End poll. Let me just take a photo just in case that doesn't work. Okay, end poll, share results. Okay, can you all see the results on the screen? So this is for option 1, co-chair Gardner. So it looks like we do have consensus on using that.
Great. Great. Well, hooray.
That's awesome.
You
Great
never
job.
know, right? So hooray,
Thank
that's
you.
great. It's great we have a group that is thinking similarly. I think that's going to definitely facilitate our work. So with that, are we ready to already move into a break? We are amazingly expeditious this morning. Who's anything else before we head into break?
No, I think we can either go into break or we can go into work. We're very ahead of time. So we were going to start work time in the breakouts at 9:50. So we can either choose to take a break now, and then go into breakouts after, or we can go into breakouts now.
I'm seeing people wanting to move forward. Yes.
All right.
December
Okay.
15th is looming large.
Yeah, and I know that a couple of folks might have to leave early, so thank you for letting us know ahead of time. Okay, Alex, if you want to launch the breakouts again.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So we were going to take a few minutes to do some share outs from our breakout groups. So we're going to start with group 1.
That's us, right? Okay. We had a really good conversation. We started with the guiding principles, and the one big change we wanted to make is one small word, but it makes a big difference. We want the standard to be that teachers have the knowledge and skills to teach all children to read. It currently says most, and we want the expectation to be that teachers are prepared to teach all students to read. Under structural changes, we're all in favor of the idea of combining reading instruction standards with dyslexia standards. Instruction that is good for students with dyslexia is good for all students, and we felt that it streamlines and makes more clear that that idea to not have them stand apart, but rather be integrated. And then we had a really big conversation about oral language. Generally speaking, in all of the work that we were doing, we noticed that a lot of what's worded there is kind of lower Bloom's taxonomy. There's a lot of the expectation is for teachers to understand such and such, and we started the work. We decided that we want to add a higher level Bloom's verb there and expect new teachers not only to understand, but to be doing something with that understanding. So integrating, applying the understanding into their instructional practice. So we got started with some edits. We made a lot of comments about edits and are pretty set to continue our work on Monday. Did I leave anything big out, Susan?
I think that was a great summary. Thank you. All right. How about group 2?
That was our group. Do y'all want me to share out? I wish we could say that we really got a long way, but we had some really great conversations, actually similar to what group 1 talked about in a lot of ways. We discussed that idea of the dyslexia standards being merged with the reading standards, so that we are sort of accessing what the knowledge and practice standards, that content, that information lines up with the literacy framework areas that we are tasked with. So that was kind of our original conversation. And then it really did go into that idea of not wanting to reinvent the wheel. So could we look at some other states' language just to give us a framework in which to start? So we had quite a few conversations about a few different states and started to look at a few of those. We have also decided that we kind of have, it's a big section. So our thoughts are that we are going to assign some major areas to each person, have them then relate that section to the framework and to a couple of states that we haven't really decided which ones yet, but that will be part of our decision making in the next day or two. And then those people will look at that specific section and try to draft some ideas that we can come back with on Monday to move from there. So that's kind of where we're at. What did I miss? Because there was so much talking. It was really great. It's a great group. A lot of fun.
All right, and then we have group 3.
Okay, I'm just gonna kind of glance over our notes that we made here. So we looked at some of the guiding principles to edit. And one was making sure that the standards are stated as outcomes that can be measured as effectiveness of the EPPs. And then also some of the language and verbiage, like in number 3, should be able to, we'd like some stronger language there. Should is vague, maybe replaced with will or must. And then let's see here for the implementation plan and timeline. We think that's really important, and that it will take time to implement the standards. We kind of talked a little bit about auditing those standards and what's in place. And then looking at the expert teachers, it takes time, but that expertise is always a journey and a process. So some wording there on that word we had some discussion on. For structural changes, we talked about definitely agreeing to combine the reading and the dyslexia. We had a discussion about the subsections, to like having it be tied exactly to the 8 sections, and not sure that would become more of just if some could be created or combined. There was a discussion if the standard should be embedded in the elementary multiple subject standards, so embedded within that. And then knowing, I think what the last group just said, really using the literacy framework, but also layering in the other states. A couple states have done some really amazing work in being able to see that framework to go forward. And then for the getting into that, just we had some discussion about how specific to be, so that knowing that we have the licensure standards have more in-depth specificity. So how in-depth, how many standards we're putting in. So we talked a little bit about that as well. We did not get into our exact section of the framework though. We have some work to do there still. And anything anybody wants to add, I just kind of went over our notes pretty quickly. I actually, Wayne had a really good idea, and that lens that keep thinking about when we're adding more on to other programs, it feels like same thing in a classroom when we keep adding on, like what's taking out. We know we're taking out some reading programs but our idea of when we're adding it could potentially add 3 more courses. And so what does that mean for the cost to a candidate? What does that, having that idea in of like when we keep adding on, what does that look like in implementation? And I think that was important to consider. I hadn't really been thinking about that, so appreciated that.
Right. And I just want to note that Julie had put into the chat wanting to query the other groups who had talked about specific states. If maybe folks want to add that to the chat, feel free. I'm going to hand it off to Rhonda. Thanks for sharing, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for all of this work. That's really, I know we were energized in our group at least I felt I was energized for sure. So thank you for getting started on that. So we are expecting this November 20th business meeting to be more time to work on these standards together. Like I said, our group was thinking of a little bit of homework, so we're a little more prepared when we come in on the 20th. This is the last meeting before our December 15th deadline. So that really will be the goal of the November 20th meeting, is to solidify a draft of those standards. We did talk a little bit about in our group about the need for it to be at a place where we feel like we can take public comment. So we need to be thinking about that, which is a lot of pressure. Our group discussed that we want it to be pretty solid before we put it out to the public. Once these are approved in that in the December 15th meeting, the November 20th meeting, then it should go out for a public comment. We can invite public to look, do electronic engagement with those standards, and we'll also put out a survey. That should be open between November 21st and December 15th. That is the plan for that. So during that time, we definitely want to welcome input from educator preparation programs. So if you have connections at other universities, that will be important to let them know that comment period is open. Educators that are in the field and any community members that might want to weigh in on those standards. So are there any concerns or questions about this process of public comment and getting us to that December 15th meeting?
So Rhonda, I have a question. It seems like an unreasonable day, because we would not have had time to be certain there was a similar structure from all three parts that we worked on, all three-part working groups. And the last thing we want is to go public with something that is tentative and not, because I can tell you people are lining up to respond. And so, I mean, I think that it's appropriate to ask the governor if that is an absolute, because it would be an absolute with not a quality product.
Right. And I think for sure it will be clear that it is a draft, but I also understand that need for it to be very solid when we put that out to the public. So I will talk with Pooja and Susan more about that. I think that's a really good point for us to think about. Any other comments on that process? I'm also wondering about that time on the 20th, if we plan to have half the time be us working in our work groups and then half the time for us to come together and make sure we have some sort of consistency across those standards, will be helpful. But I also wonder, will we be able to suss that all out by the end of that meeting? So good things for us to think about and talk through as co-chairs, but also want to hear others' thoughts on that too.
Rhonda, Wayne has his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Wayne. Sorry.
Thank you. No problem. I guess I have a little bit of a concern about terminology. Rhonda, you referred to these recommendations as standards quite a bit, but is that going to get confused with actual program standards? And so should we choose a different way to describe that? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I guess I don't know the answer to that other than what we've been tasked with by the governor. It says recommendations for standards. So I don't know if somebody from the governor's staff could answer that. Pooja, do you have
I'm happy to. So Wayne, this is basically using the terminology that your commission and agency uses, which is Educator Preparation Program Approval Standards, and
right.
developed in consultation with your prior agency director. So the educator preparation program approval standards is really what the December 15th deadline is about. But you're right that we need to make sure that around licensing standards, which tend to be way more detailed, that really is related to March deadline.
Yeah.
That helps answer.
I guess I'm just wondering if we somehow should distinguish between the recommendation for standards and the standards themselves. I wasn't sure that was clear. So that's all I was worried about. So I appreciate the fact that you're continuing to use the term standards, because that's indeed what we will, hopefully will be tasked with, is putting together the actual program standards. But I just thought sometimes there was confusion with regard to the recommendation itself and the standards that will come out of that. So anyway.
Anita?
Maybe it's just my problem.
Wayne, I'm confused because it's appeared to me that we were writing standards, not giving you a recommendation like you need to have a standard about phonemic awareness. That's not our task. Our task is actually to write the standards, because we're the outside body that is telling the TSPC, these are the standards that we want to be adopted. So they need to be, because I was confused too. I got a few emails that appeared that your group was going to write the standards. And I did not get that impression from saying yes to this committee and being on this committee.
Well, if we go back to the deliverables and the governor's charge, I believe the language is recommendations for standards. Yeah.
But that wouldn't be a standard. We recommend these standards. We're not recommending these areas for standards. We're kind of loosely, because that was the whole purpose, to bring expertise together to ensure that it would make a difference in children's reading. And so it can't be, that is so general. That's what we've done in the past. And we all determined that it was not useful. So that's why you have a group of expertise.
So yeah, just to back up what Rhonda pointed out here on the screen, thank you for sharing that, Kristen, is actually what comes directly from the executive order. So it does explicitly call out that we are developing recommendations for the standards.
Recommended standards, not just recommendations, recommended standards.
I think, in particular, it says recommendations to revise the existing standards for literacy instruction. So I think, I don't know how the TSPC system works. Once we provide those recommendations, is that your starting point, or that will be what you intend to adopt, or how that whole process works?
Well, my thought was, and I could be wrong on this, but my thought was that these recommendations would articulate the intent and the content of what you want to be included in the standards, but that the actual framing of the standards would be what we would put together based upon that recommendation.
That is my understanding as well.
I'll just jump in that clearly there's different interpretations of this. The intention has always been that this group is really an advisory body to make recommendations that will ultimately be decided by a body that is designated in the law, which is the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, to ultimately make rule changes related to standards. It is also true that this is a body that is going to develop recommendations to revise those standards. So both things are true. And the intentionality of what you saw in the recommended outlines is so that this body can stay within the purview that it was designed to stay in, which is like, what are the types of guiding principles, big picture, drawing from the multiple conversations you've had, and the recommendations to actually revise those standards. So the outline is designed to be able to provide the level of altitude that this was intended to go through. So I think you're both correct. It's my
Anita, you're on mute.
Standards were so general that it really did not give direction to educational programs of what they needed to teach. And that's what we were trying to do, is come up with standards that would say, if we want children in Oregon to read, these are the things that they need to be taught. This is the science of reading. This is the science of instruction that needs to be incorporated. So that just, I presumed, because it says recommended standards shall include knowledge, skills, and dispositions, that it would be recommended standards, not just areas, because it's so general now that we can't guarantee that teachers can walk into a classroom and teach children how to read.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the process then is within TSPC. So once the recommendations are made, what is the internal review and adoption in that sense, so that we have an idea of where the next stage?
I think that by providing our recommendations for those revisions to the standards, we can feel confident that those will be taken for what they are, in terms of, we've consulted a lot of people on who have a lot of expertise in these areas, that I don't think TSPC will take that lightly, but at the same time, we are not that entity that writes those standards in general. So with that said, I think what we need to do is kind of move on to the next thing. But we'll continue this discussion and thinking about that altitude, as Pooja talked about, in terms of what we need to be as our deliverable.
And I think this is all going to flesh out more as we spend more time in these working groups, right? Today was really our first stab at this. And as we all get more deeply embedded in these conversations and really work on the details, I think it's going to get closer to this place where people feel, confident that we are giving something of substance over to TSPC to look at. All right. So we had set aside some time to give anyone who wanted to do a bit of a check-in. So we're gonna, you are not required to do this, but any council members who would like to share up to 2 minutes of their thinking about questions, considerations, just general thinking, you're welcome to decline if you don't wish to share. But what we're gonna do is just read the names of the council members. I'm going to date myself by saying I have a gong and a hook. So I'm going to time you for 2 minutes, and then the gong's going to ring. So from that, please state if you would like to pass or have your 2 minutes, and I have my timer. All right. So with that, first by alphabetical order is Dr. Archer. Would you like to say anything for 2 minutes?
So I married an Archer, so I'd be AA, so I'd be first. Our group was a very fruitful group today. And I'm sorry that I had a misunderstanding, because I presumed that we would be writing actual standards. And the specificity is what Oregon needs, because without the specificity, leaving it up to individuals to choose what they teach, this is not a case of having permission to do what you wish. We know this makes a difference. We know these things need to be taught. They need to be taught in a certain way. And when we do that, we have significant outcomes. And it is the outcomes that we have to be thinking about. It's the children who we are thinking about. And I see across our state, when these are introduced, like the last 7 school districts I was in, they've introduced foundation skills that are very, very strong, and already are reducing the number of students that need an intervention. But the teachers need to go in, they need to know what phonemic awareness is and how to teach it, and decoding and how to teach it, and vocabulary and how to teach it. And they really need skills. And I want people to be so confident And it's not general information, it is specific information that makes a difference. And so I am committed to hang in there until teachers leave being competent in this area. They at least deserve to be able to teach children how to read. Our state deserves it. And let us not take our eyes off of the students. And so my hope is that specificity will be added, whether we write the standards and they're adopted by TSPC, or we adopt standards and then they look at them and how to incorporate them. Thank you.
Wonderful. Even 10 seconds left. All right. Next we have Heidi Brown.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Our group is doing good work. It's really easy to get off on side conversations. So I appreciate the guidance of, hey, here's your task. Here's the absolute outcome that we're wanting from you. I'll echo that at the building level, change is needed. We have too many students not reading at grade level with our current practices. And so that impetus of, as hard as it is to make change, change is needed. We also, administrators, principals are going through a process right now of putting together our literacy plans in applying for the literacy grant from the state. It's due January 8th. So we're all going through an audit process at the building level anyway of what are we doing with core instructions, with interventions, with assessments. This is very much in the air. And I can just tell you from practitioners at the building level, they're excited about this work. I actually think there's going to be good energy around the work that we're doing if we can work together. And I'm certain that the impact will be great. Like Dr. Archer said, we're already seeing students make tremendous gains and just shifting some of our foundational practices. So I appreciate being part of the work.
Thank you, Heidi. Julie had to leave us a little early today, Julie Brown. So next is Katie Danielson.
I'll pass.
Thank you. Next we have Makeka Overstreet.
That was a huge jump. I was like, oh, it's a long time from now. I just will quickly say that I appreciate that we're doing this so collaboratively, that we're being mindful. I just want us, one of my sort of mantras is, rejecting deficit perspectives, which we always do of children. I want us to continue to do that as related to our educators, as well as we're thinking about building out these recommendations. It's a hard time to be an educator right now. And so as we are thinking about our educator prep faculty, our administrators, our teachers, they're all going to need support in doing these best practices so that they can do what's best for kids. So I appreciated, and now I'm forgetting who said it, maybe Shauna's, who said we have to take some things away, as we're putting things in. So let's just keep being mindful about making sure that we are thinking about being all in this together and thinking of these standards as a tool to just keep improving literacy in Oregon. So that's all.
Thank you, Makeka. Next we have Julie Reagan.
I just wanted to say that I feel like this is really exciting work, being a teacher, working in the school. So I'm really hopeful for improvements across the state. We're working on building stronger teachers so that we can build stronger kids. And I really like our focus of being more specific in standards and expectations. And I really like the idea that was talked about a lot more today about bringing the idea of reading instruction and what quality reading instruction looks like, and dyslexia, and that conversation, bringing those together. And I just wanted to say, I appreciate how organized you guys are and how you pull off these meetings. I'm so impressed with that as well.
Thank you, Julie. Next we have Shanaz.
Yeah, that was a quick jump to the end of the alphabet. I echo a lot of what has been said. Kids are born into all different situations and all different scenarios, and from birth are kind of automatically set on varying trajectories. And our most important job as the education system is to make sure that all students learn when they come, as they come to us and come through our system. I'm really, really excited about the framework, and that the framework incorporates current best knowledge based on a lot of science. I'm really excited about the opportunity for, or the commitment to creating new standards that are something that I think will bring better instruction and better chances to all kids through something that's more permanent, like a standard, which I hope will be rooted in the framework, which I see as something that can be a living document that can always respond quickly to the ever evolving body of research. I'm really excited that this really sets the trajectory for teachers to be the ones who get the really, really important tools. I think Oregon has a good opportunity to learn from states that have been too over prescriptive. And I think being very prescriptive comes from, oh, this is the only way to remedy that problem. We have a problem. We have a big problem in that we have a huge percentage of kids who are not developing proficient language arts standards. I don't see the remedy to that being prescription, but rather knowledge and application in our teachers and equipping teachers well. So I also want to thank everybody for being so organized. And one thing I've really noticed and appreciated is no matter when we're in big groups or small groups, it seems that we come to consensus pretty easily. So I feel like that is really hopeful.
Thank you, Shanaz. Valerie had to leave us early today. So next is Jennifer Witten.
Thank you. So just to kind of just echo what Heidi said at the building level, I am just seeing so much excitement, and the idea of, maybe an older notion of that teachers not willing to change. We've had so much change at our school in the last year, and teachers just really thinking about where can I go in my teaching practice to have better outcomes for students, and the amount of learning that they're doing on their own and within groups. And then the outcomes that we're seeing already has just been really impressive. We just have incredibly wonderful educators in Oregon. Another thing I've been excited is just to look at some of the more specific states that have really laid out some expectations. I think that in terms of specifically Massachusetts and Florida, just the way it's outlined, you can see that how it can be operationalized in a classroom setting and for our newer teachers and what they're going to be learning. And then also just with some harder conversations I've had, I think coming back to the idea of trust. And so when we felt like rebuilding trust and where we center trust, where maybe as educators, we maybe aren't trusting ourselves, or we aren't trusting older standards to get the outcomes that we needed. And so I felt like when I was able to name that with a group of teachers last week, we were able to take a sigh of relief that trust is where we have to start rebuilding ourselves and our commitment to students again. So, and thank you again for keeping us all organized. I agree.
Thank you. Senator Dembro is not here with us today. So next on our list is Senator Weber.
Thank you. I appreciate how organized you are, and I haven't had a lot of comments to add to any kind of a discussion today because I've been taking care of a possible spill on the Columbia right now. But I really appreciate the discussion and everything that's been happening in this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next, Representative Bowman, I know is in DC. So Seth, did you have any remarks you wanted to make on his behalf?
I just want to apologize to the representative not being able to be present today, and appreciate all the great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Wright.
Well, thank you, and ditto to all the comments that were made today. I think we're all headed in the same direction, and that's really important. I think we need to look not only at what we're prescribing, but we also need to look at how. It's very intimidating to look at some of the programs that are out there in states and then thinking of just giving it to a teacher and saying, okay, do it. No, we have to have some prescriptions that are suggestions. In other words, here are some ideas about how you can deal with this certain subject. But we, as somebody mentioned, and we trust you to do the best you can in looking at the outcomes. The other thing I just want to make sure that we take a really good look at is where we are. We know where we're going. We have these literacy ideas in mind and we know where we're going. We need to work on how we're going to get there. That's for sure. But the other thing is we have to know where we are. And so we have to have in some manner to take a look at our teacher prep programs and figure out where they are as far as these, 5 cornerstones of literacy. Where are our teacher prep programs? How are they teaching it? What curricula? Does it identify in syllabi? All those kinds of things. So before we get to where we want to be, I think we need to know where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wright. Next, we have Director Ben Cannon.
Yeah, thanks. Just very briefly, a lot of the work of this council is appropriately focused on recommendations for standards changes, for EPPs, and for licensure. I appreciated the call out in the guiding principles document on the implementation of program changes and the support that the council will, or the work that the council will do to consider how to support, for example, our educator preparation programs in changing what they do, if that's what the standards require. And I just mentioned that because I think the most perfect standards in the world won't get us where we want to be without real consideration, thought, and support for the implementation. And I think that's often where our best intended policy efforts sort of fall short in their impact. So look forward to that conversation to come. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Interim Director Sarah Spencer.
Just lots of really great comments, and I agree with everything that's been shared. And I would just add that I've appreciated our focus on the standards and the direction. And I look forward to, as Ben mentioned, the implementation conversation, not so much about the steps, but what is it we're doing to support both our educators who are either a teacher or an administrator in the field after implementation. What does that look like? And how can we best address it? Because we can make all the plans in the world, and when they're being fulfilled, what are those supports that we can put in place or think about that will ensure that the work continues, and that whomever it is, whether it's an administrator or a literacy coach, they have the tools necessary to help guide teachers and support their improvement. I see that as a big, probably my team members are tired of me saying it, but I think it's a missing element that needs just as much consideration, almost as the standards, is what happens when there's support that's needed and who provides that, and what does that mean for the outcomes for students. And again, as everyone has said, the organization and support has been really helpful.
Thank you. Next, we have Director Williams is not here with us today, so we have Wayne Strickland.
Thank you for allowing me to speak briefly. TSBC and my unit in particular is devoted to continuous improvement. And so this is a wonderful opportunity. In some senses, I feel like the emperor with the new clothes, because this does, and in fact, lay bare our past standards or our current standards that we have. But I've appreciated the collaborative approach. I really appreciate the fact that we're using as our option 1 framework, the K-12 framework. I also appreciate the fact that we will be influenced as we look at other states and their standards. I think that TSBC recognizes the need. More importantly, I think the EPPs already have recognized the need and have already begun to work on this area themselves. So it's not a hard sell to say that everyone agrees that we need to continue to work and revise the standards. I think the actual standards will be expert driven. They will be practitioner driven. The EPPs have many experts and people that are practicing in this field that will be able to help to fine tune these particular recommendations in terms of standards. And so I'm very optimistic about that. This is not, I think, as Ben seemed to allude to, this is not a fix-all. There are so many pieces to this and the issues that you're well aware of in terms of things like how long should our school year be for these young people? How do you guarantee that the graduates of the EPPs, when they're teaching, that they are effectively using these strategies that they've learned? I know that's a challenge for EPPs, is to track on their graduates. And, that's something we probably need to address as well and work on. But I'm excited about this project. And I think that I'm excited about where we've gone so far as well. So thank you very much for just the critical work that you're doing, each of you is doing for the sake of our Oregon students.
Thank you, Dr. Strickland. Next, we have Co-Chair Fritz.
Thank you. I think I want to back up what several people have already said, but in particular, what Jennifer said about the amazing teachers that we have. I've experienced in the last 2 years, well, since COVID actually, how much teachers are inspired by and empowered by gaining new knowledge and aren't, I think people, when I first started doing teacher training, thought that teachers would be resistant or reticent about taking on new learning. And I've found the exact opposite to be true. They are very energized and empowered. And I want to make sure that our teacher candidates feel that same level of skill and empowerment. Like they know they can do well for all kids. And I think what the work that we're doing and with the grounding in this is about children and making sure that our teachers are equipped with the knowledge and skills to be able to teach any child in their class to read. And it's been great conversation today. And I want to back up what Julie said. I love that we're starting to talk about how those commonalities across the dyslexia standards versus the reading. And it just is fun to be in a group of people that are so passionate and want to do what's right for kids. So thank you for all the work you're all doing. It's been a good journey so far.
Great. Thank you, Rhonda. And I'm even going to time myself here. So just a privilege to be able to capture what I heard many of you saying and to restate it. One, the collaborative spirit of this group has been really inspiring. I think everybody here is coming from the same mindset, the same framework that this is about kids. This is about trying to improve learning for all of our children in Oregon. And I think also to serve as hopefully role models for other states who are working through some of these issues, and seeing this wonderful collaborative process happen is inspiring. I also want to touch upon that topic of trust, because I think that's an important piece, and that, that we are all trying to row in the same direction. And if I were going to speak on behalf of educator preparation programs and our colleges and schools of education here in the state of Oregon, that is very much true. We are here to serve. We are here to try and create and inspire the next generation of educators. And our best intentions are there too. So I think bringing that knowledge, the diverse knowledge that we have here in this group is so important, because if we can keep those pieces grounded, that makes a big difference. And as we are consulting other states and seeing the expertise they have and their lessons learned, looking at their evaluation research, looking at ongoing research is going to be really helpful and informative to our work. So thank you. I appreciate the privilege to be with this group. And with that, I am going to turn it back to Rhonda.
Thank you. Well, I just want to close by saying, reiterating everything Susan said. It has been really an honor to collaborate with all of you. I think we're early. So I'm not sure what we decided. We are in the chat trying to decide what our next steps are. What did we decide, Pooja?
I'm happy to jump in. And first I want to just state, just for folks watching at home, the chat reflected earlier on a question of what states are being looked at. That Rep. Wright stated that his group 2 was looking at Ohio, Colorado, and Massachusetts. And Jennifer, I can't remember, Jennifer, what group you said that you were in. 1, is it right?
I'm in group 3.
3, sorry, said Massachusetts and Colorado. So some similarities in terms of the states that different groups are looking at. So just wanted to reflect that. And then with the 30 minutes that we actually have, we can kind of end the business meeting because this is where the quorum is and this is where the decisions are being made, and go back into breakouts in the work groups. If you all could use that extra time to go into group breakouts, which no decisions will be made because there is no quorum and not accessible to members of the public, but we'll publish kind of notes afterwards. So that's the question that I have back to you all. Would it be valuable to go back into the work groups that we were in? Seeing head nods.
I think work group number 2 could really use the time to solidify what our homework is. But if everybody's amenable to that, I don't know about other groups.
I think I would like to touch base with work group number 3 just to check on what we can prepare for Monday.
Great. Well, with that, we could close the meeting, co-chairs, and this ends the business meeting, and go back into breakouts where no decisions will be made again. Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Alex, if you can take care of that.
Thank you, everyone.